The United States has one of the highest incarceration rates in the world. When people think about the American prison system, they often assume it exists to deliver justice and protect the public. However, for millions of people, the system doesn't represent fairness. Instead, it consists of inequality, punishment, and injustice. The reality is that incarceration in the U.S. is heavily shaped by factors such as race, economic status, and systematic discrimination rather than decisions alone. People from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are much more likely to be arrested, unable to afford bail, and forced to rely on overworked representatives. This results in longer sentences and a higher risk of wrongful conviction. These economic disparities are closely linked to race, where communities of colors continue to experience the effects of systematic discrimination. Policies such as minimum sentencing have emphasized these inequalities by prioritizing punishment over rehabilitation, even for non-violent offenses. Furthermore, inside prisons, injustices such as neglect, overcrowding, and extreme sentencing are common. Mental health and substance abuse treatment are usually overlooked. In fact, many incarcerated individuals struggle with substance abuse and mental health challenges. But instead of addressing these problems, the prison system worsens them by not providing them the necessary resources and overusing solitary confinement. This leads to the cycle of incarceration for many people. After release, formerly incarcerated people face problems surrounding housing, employment, and healthcare, making re-entry into society very difficult. These outcomes are a result of poor political decisions and society's attitudes towards inmates, which dehumanizes and silences former inmates' voices. In studying this issue, our group followed the Praxis cycle of social justice, which consists of gaining awareness and analyzing what we learned and taking action to make the world a more equitable place. The mission of our group was to learn and bring awareness to many injustices within the prison systems. Our essential question became, what does injustice look like in prisons, and how can we work to diminish the negative effects it has on people?
This project required us to recognize the existence, depth, and ongoing impact of injustice in the American prison system. At the beginning, our understanding came from news articles and statistics that showed high incarceration rates and racial disparities in the United States. This helped us realize that awareness is the first step in meaningful social justice work. The awareness phase of Praxis cycle revealed major structural problems in the justice system. According to the Justice Initiative, wealth, not culpability, shapes outcomes, showing that the system is not truly impartial. People with money have better access to legal help, creating inequality in legal outcomes. Racial injustice is another major issue. Research by Ashley Nellis shows that 1 in 5 Black men born in the early 2000s will be incarcerated in their lifetime. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops reports that African Americans make up nearly half of the prison population, despite being only 12% of the U.S. population. This data points to deep, systematic racial biases. Local systems reflect the same problem. In Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, federal investigations revealed deaths in custody, overcrowding, and poor health care, showing a system that fails to protect human dignity. These local failures mirror national injustice and discrimination. The justice system also produces wrongful convictions and enforces harsh sentencing policies such as mandatory minimums and zero-tolerance laws, which increase mass incarceration without improving public safety. After release, many individuals face poverty, trauma, and high recidivism rates, proving the system often fails to rehabilitate people or help them rebuild their lives. Instead of delivering justice, the system reinforces inequality and long-term harm. The release of people causes their permanent state of poverty, trauma, and recidivism, which is when they continue engaging in criminal activity. The essential question is, what is the recidivism rate? The percent represented in the question, which is the result of these specific problems that the justice system has been dealing with. It represents the failure and its eternity, and it also shows that the justice system fails to restore some people to their previous state.
Injustices can also be understood through the perspective of Scripture and Catholic social teaching, CST. One important theme of CST is the life and dignity of the human person. CST teaches that the life of a human being is sacred and that the dignity of a human person is the foundation of a moral vision for society. Likewise, the Church teaches that the measure of every institution is whether it threatens or enhances the life and dignity of the human person. The injustices within a prison system directly contradict these teachings because violence literally opposes the value of human life. Another case in point is that violence is discouraged in Scripture. In Matthew 25:40, Matthew writes, "Whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." This quote from the Bible shows the moral requirement for Catholics to treat all people with the dignity and respect they deserve, regardless of what mistakes they have made in the past or mental illnesses they have. In the Gospel, Christ calls people to focus on the charism of forgiveness and to forgive regardless of the circumstance. The Congregation of the Holy Cross defines forgiveness as a relational, heart-centered gift. It must come from the heart with all sincerity and truth. The Holy Cross charisms mimic Jesus' call to forgive regardless of the severity of their offense. Jesus says that forgiveness is not based on the scale of how wrong something was, but rather that everyone deserves equal forgiveness because of God's unconditional and never-ending love for humanity. In the context of the prison system, Jesus calls us to forgive and love those who have done wrong and have a mental illness, and to not fall into the cycle of resentment and anger. Catholic social teaching rejects all systems that judge people based on their racial or social class status, confirming the inherent life and dignity of every human being, and proving that all people share equal value. According to Galatians 3:28, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free person, there is no male and female, for you all one in Jesus Christ. Everyone is equal. The Holy Cross charisms of hope and the principle of solidarity requires people to understand the suffering which poor people and incarcerated individuals experience. Our research suggests that the problem appears more critical than it did before. The data has identified patterns of inequality. The interviews have identified the suffering, and the moral responsibility has been identified by our faith. The American prison system is not merely failing to rehabilitate, it is actually destroying human dignity. We are no longer neutral observers because we are now aware. The cycle of praxis begins with awareness. We must ask not only what is happening, but also what we must do next. We must contemplate the facts, we must act on the voices, and we must act according to our faith.
When we analyze the injustices within the U.S. prison system, we have to start with the foundational definition of justice. Our group had the opportunity to interview Judge Dominic Coletta from the Lyndhurst Municipal Court. In our interview with Judge Coletta, he described justice as the ideal that all people are treated equally and properly, symbolized by Lady Justice, who must set aside personal bias to remain truly blind. However, the reality of the system often falls short of this standard. While the judge noted that the overrepresentation of African American males in prison does not inherently prove individuals' unfairness in every case, he highlighted how systemic tools can create lopsided results. For instance, once an individual enters the system, the focus shifts to the physical conditions of confinement. Judge Coletta admitted that the overcrowding is a persistent issue and noted that the staggering budgetary constraints where some county jails operate on just $3 per day for inmates' food. While officers interact with inmates and are aware of these conditions, they rarely experience them firsthand. A gap in accountability mirrors the gap in experience. While body cameras are becoming standard for police on the street, they are notably absent for officers working inside correctional facilities. This lack of transparency makes it difficult to address potential abuses of power. Ultimately, the analysis suggests that to fix the system, we must move beyond simple incarceration. We need to address the underlying issues like mental health and provide meaningful rehabilitation. True justice requires us to look at those sitting in jail not just as numbers, but as human beings who require mental health support and humane treatment to ensure the system helps rather than harms them.
The third phase of the Praxis cycle is action. For our action contribution, we collected candy, wrote notes for police officers, and donated books to prisons. Each part of our service addressed a different part of the prison system. Donating books directly addressed the lack of educational resources within prisons. Many incarcerated individuals have limited access to books and learning opportunities, which affects their rehabilitation and re-entry into society. By donating books, we supported education, mental health, and personal growth. This part of our service helped give voice to those who are unheard by giving them tools to build knowledge and reduce the likelihood of reoffending. This benefits families and neighborhoods throughout the Cleveland community. The candy and the handwritten notes for the police officers focus on encouraging a positive relationship between law enforcement and the community. In Cleveland, the tension between police and community is high. Even small gestures encourage empathy, appreciation, and mutual respect. Strengthening this respect between law enforcement and the community will reduce the amount of unjust encounters and lower the number of unnecessary incarcerations. Our service included elements of charity, which meet immediate needs and demonstrate compassion. However, justice goes beyond short-term actions. Instead, it addresses the root causes of injustice. In the future, expanding education initiatives for those incarcerated and law enforcement, implementing meaningful prison reform measures, and funding community-based organizations would create a lasting and transformative change. To continue the Praxis cycle, it is important to reflect on our impact, identify remaining injustices, and take further action that go beyond charity and work towards justice.
In conclusion, injustices in the prison system do not only harm incarcerated individuals, they also impact families, communities, and society as a whole. Real change requires a shift from punishment to rehabilitation, reducing overcrowding, ensuring humane living conditions, and addressing root causes such as racial and economic inequality and the privatization of prisons. These issues are deeply embedded within the system itself and continue to cause injustices. Meaningful reform includes fair sentencing laws, improved mental health and physical health care, access to education, and re-entry programs that help formerly incarcerated individuals successfully reintegrate into society. By listening to the voices of those affected and holding leaders accountable, we can move closer to a justice system that is truly fair, restorative, and rooted in the dignity of every human person. Hope is not lost. Efforts are being made to focus more intentionally on rehabilitation within the justice system. The local police department is working to support programs centered on reintegration and reducing recidivism by addressing the underlying causes of incarceration. By consulting judges such as Judge Coletta, these initiatives aim to better understand why individuals are incarcerated and why many struggle after release, allowing the system to respond more effectively. One way individuals like yourself can help prevent injustices in the prison system is by supporting organizations like Edwin's. Edwin's is a restaurant and educational institution in Cleveland, Ohio. Founded by Brandon Kowalski, it functions as a leadership and restaurant institute, providing formerly incarcerated individuals with paid employment and training in culinary acts and hospitality. By offering education, mentorship, and opportunity, Edwin's empowers people to rebuild their lives after incarceration. Supporting Edwin's, such as by dining there, helps sustain these programs and provides a vital pathway for successful reentry into society.